The morning sun streamed through the windows of Mayo Clinic's Advanced Treatment Center as Dr. Laura Bennett adjusted her white coat and checked the monitors one last time. Her patient, a 12-year-old boy named Sam, smiled weakly from the hospital bed. The nanomedicine treatment she had developed was his last hope against an aggressive form of brain cancer that had resisted all conventional therapies. "Ready for your next treatment, Sam?" she asked, her voice gentle as she prepared the injection. The boy nodded, his mother squeezing his hand from the bedside chair. The clear liquid in the syringe contained millions of microscopic robots, each programmed to hunt down and destroy cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. As Dr. Bennett administered the treatment, the room's lighting suddenly flickered. She paused, looking up at the ceiling fixtures with mild concern. The hospital's backup systems should have prevented any power fluctuations in the treatment areas. Her tablet buzzed with an urgent notification, followed by several more in quick succession. The first sign that something truly unusual was happening came from Sam's mother, who gasped and pointed at the window. Dr. Bennett turned to see what had caught her attention, and her own breath caught in her throat. A massive shadow was creeping across the grounds outside, far too large to be from any cloud. Nurses and doctors in nearby rooms began crowding around windows. Above the hospital, stretching as far as they could see, hung an enormous vessel that resembled a giant metallic lotus flower. Its silver-purple surface caught the sunlight, creating patterns that seemed to shift and move across its hull. Dr. Bennett's tablet suddenly projected a holographic message into the air, something it had never done before. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it had an odd musical quality to it. "People of Earth, we are the Zaxxonary Confederation. We come in peace to observe and learn." Security personnel rushed through the corridors, but there was little they could do against a ship that dwarfed the entire medical complex. Similar reports began flowing in from major hospitals worldwide, identical ships appearing over medical centers in London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and dozens of other cities. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Government officials arrived, setting up a temporary command center in the hospital's administrative wing. Dr. Bennett found herself pulled into emergency meetings, trying to explain her nanomedicine research to officials who barely understood conventional medicine, let alone the cutting-edge technology she worked with. The Zaxxonary representatives, when they finally appeared, were tall, elegant beings with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. They moved with careful precision, as if they were studying every aspect of their surroundings. Their apparent leader, who called itself Primary Observer Killoran, showed particular interest in Dr. Bennett's work. "Your methods of healing are fascinating," Killoran said, its voice carrying the same musical quality as the earlier announcement. "We have traveled far to observe such techniques. Your species shows remarkable innovation in medical science." Dr. Bennett couldn't shake an uneasy feeling as she showed them her laboratory and explained her research. The Zaxxonary asked incredibly detailed questions, demonstrating an understanding of medical science that seemed far beyond what they should need as mere observers. Later that evening, as she reviewed Sam's latest test results showing another successful treatment, Dr. Bennett noticed something odd in the hospital's research database. Files were being accessed and copied at an unprecedented rate. When she tried to investigate further, her access was suddenly blocked. She was still trying to reach its security when the first screams echoed through the hospital corridors. The Zaxxonary ships had begun emitting a strange, pulsing light. Medical staff in several wings of the hospital simply vanished, leaving confused patients and frightened families behind. Dr. Bennett ran to her laboratory, desperate to secure her research data. As she reached for her backup drives, she felt a tingling sensation throughout her body. The last thing she saw was the concerned face of Sam's mother as she watched Dr. Bennett fade from existence, along with dozens of other medical professionals throughout the building. The first phase of the Zaxxonary plan was complete. They had come not to observe, but to take, and they had just acquired some of humanity's finest healers for their true purpose, one that would soon lead Earth to launch its greatest rescue mission in history. The Space Monitoring Station in Colorado buzzed with frantic activity as Commander Peter Walsh stared at the emergency reports flooding his screens. 12 hours had passed since the first abductions, and the numbers were staggering. Over 3,000 medical personnel had vanished from hospitals across the globe, leaving behind confused patients and desperate families. His hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the latest dispatch. Mayo Clinic had lost 63 staff members, including Dr. Laura Bennett, whose groundbreaking nanomedicine research had been making headlines just days before. The Zaxneri ships still hovered over major medical centers, their metallic lotus-like forms casting ominous shadows over the buildings below. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Zaxneri flagship," called out Lieutenant Susan Carter from her communications station. Her voice carried a mix of anger and fear that matched the mood throughout the command center. The main screen flickered to life, showing primary observer Kilran's iridescent face. Its galaxy-like eyes seemed to hold a cold calculation that hadn't been noticeable during their first contact. "Your healers are safe," it announced without preamble. "They will serve a greater purpose among the stars." Walsh leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Return our people immediately. This is a direct violation of every agreement we've made." "Agreements?" Kilran's musical voice carried an edge of dismissal. "We made no binding agreements. We came to observe, and we observed. What we saw was worth taking." The transmission cut off abruptly. Walsh slammed his fist on his desk, causing several officers to jump. The Zaxneri ships began moving in perfect synchronization, rising higher into the atmosphere. Earth's primitive defense systems could only track them as they accelerated away from the planet. Inside one of the Zaxneri vessels, Dr. Bennett found herself in a stark white chamber with dozens of other medical professionals. Through a curved window, she watched Earth grow smaller until it was just a blue marble in the distance. The room hummed with whispered conversations in multiple languages as doctors and nurses tried to make sense of their situation. "They're keeping us separated by specialty," said Dr. Alan Price, a surgeon from London who sat nearby. "Everyone in this chamber is involved in experimental treatments or research." His observation sent a chill through the group. This wasn't a random abduction, it was a carefully planned operation. Dr. Bennett noticed something else. Their captors had allowed them to keep their tablets and medical devices. When she turned hers on, she found it could still access her research files, though all communication functions were blocked. The Zaxneri wanted them to continue their work. Back on Earth, the first response teams were finally mobilizing. The newly commissioned Space Force Medical Command had been preparing for off-world medical emergencies, not an alien kidnapping of their personnel. But their ships, designed to provide rapid medical response in space, were now being repurposed for a rescue mission. Walsh received word that Admiral Catherine Martins was en route to take command of the situation. The Space Force's medical rescue vessels, including the advanced U.S. Nightingale, were being armed with defensive capabilities. Earth's governments were unanimously agreeing to a military response, something that hadn't happened since World War III. In the Zaxneri ship's medical bay, Dr. Bennett was starting to understand the aliens' desperate motivation. While treating a young Zaxneri who had been injured in the abduction operation, she noticed severe cellular degradation throughout its body. Their entire species was dying, and they saw Earth's medical knowledge as their salvation. She watched through another window as more ships joined their convoy, all heading toward an unknown destination. The Zaxneri had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that taking Earth's healers would give them access to humanity's medical knowledge. Instead, they had given humanity's protectors a reason to unite and follow them into space. As Earth vanished from view, Dr. Bennett made a silent promise to her patient Sam, who was probably wondering why she had disappeared in the middle of his treatment. She would find a way back, and based on the determined faces of her fellow captives, she knew she wouldn't be working alone. Admiral Catherine Martinez stood at the command center of the U.S. Nightingale, her sharp eyes fixed on the holographic display showing Earth's assembled fleet. In just 72 hours, humanity had managed to gather the largest space force in its history. The medical rescue vessels, originally designed for peaceful missions, had been quickly modified with weapon systems and enhanced shields. Captain Daniel Woods approached her with a tablet displaying the latest reports. All ships report ready, Admiral. The British HFY Mercy's Light and Canadian CSV Florence have taken their positions in the formation. He paused before adding, the Chinese have contributed their entire medical fleet as well. Martinez nodded, her expression grim but determined. The Hippocratic Protocol, a military directive specifically designed to protect medical personnel, had been unanimously activated by all Earth nations. Politics and old rivalries had been set aside in the face of this unprecedented threat to their healers. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan, working at the tactical station, looked up from her console. Admiral, we've finished analyzing the Zaxnari warp signatures. They're heading toward the Proxima Centauri system. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, bringing up a detailed star map. Based on their trajectory, we estimate they have at least 3 major facilities in that region. The U.S. Nightingale's medical bay had been converted into a combination command center and staging area. Dr. Kevin Harris, one of the few senior medical officers who hadn't been taken, worked with his team to prepare for possible casualties. They had no idea what kind of resistance they would face, but they were determined to be ready. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez, she announced, her voice carrying across the combined fleet's communication channels. The Zaxnari believed they could simply take our people and disappear into the stars. They failed to understand something fundamental about humanity. We protect our healers at all costs. The fleet's engines hummed to life, creating a symphony of power that seemed to echo through space itself. The Nightingale's advanced medical teleportation system had been modified to pierce through the Zaxnari shields, thanks to data gathered during the abductions. Every ship carried similar upgrades, along with teams of combat medics ready for rescue operations. In the ship's tactical room, Lieutenant Sullivan briefed the rescue teams. Our primary advantage is surprise. The Zaxnari don't believe we have the capability to follow them through interstellar space. She pointed to the detailed scans of their ships. Their vessels are advanced, but they're designed for medical research, not warfare. They never expected to fight. The fleet moved into formation, with the Nightingale at its heart. The medical rescue vessels were surrounded by protective escorts, their newly installed weapon systems gleaming under the starlight. Martinez had positioned the faster ships on the outer edges, ready to intercept any Zaxnari vessels that might try to escape with their captives. As they prepared for their first faster-than-light jump, Martinez received a private message from Earth's Combined Military Command. The contents were clear. This mission was about more than just rescue. They needed to send a message to any other alien species watching. Earth's medical personnel were off-limits. The stars stretched into brilliant lines as the fleet made its jump. Martinez thought about Dr. Bennett and the thousands of other medical professionals who had been taken. They were out there somewhere, probably using their skills to help others even in captivity. It was just the nature of healers. But soon they would learn that their dedication was matched by humanity's dedication to protecting them. Fleet reports all jumped successful, Captain Woods announced. We're on course for Proxima Centauri. Martinez allowed herself a small smile. The Zaxnari had made a serious error in judgment. They had seen Earth's medical knowledge as something they could simply take. Instead, they had awakened humanity's protective instincts and given them a reason to unite. The rescue fleet was just the beginning. Earth would never again be seen as an easy target. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan watched the holographic display as the Earth fleet emerged from its final jump into the Proxima Centauri system. The stars steadied around them, and there, scattered among the outer planets, she could see the distinctive lotus-shaped forms of Zaxnari medical stations. Her combat medic training kicked in as she analyzed their defensive capabilities. 3 main stations detected, she reported to Admiral Martinez. The largest one appears to be their primary research facility. Her fingers flew over the tactical display, highlighting energy signatures. They're moving our people between stations. Medical personnel are being grouped by specialty. Dr. Laura Bennett, meanwhile, had spent the past week in the Zaxonary's main research facility. She now understood the aliens' desperate situation all too well. Their genetic structure was breaking down, causing their entire species to age rapidly. Without intervention, they would be extinct within 1 generation. She worked in a large laboratory with doctors from various Earth hospitals, all trying to understand the Zaxonary condition. Despite their situation as captives, many of the medical staff couldn't help but be fascinated by the challenge. It was in their nature to want to heal, even if their patients were also their captors. The cellular degradation is accelerating, Dr. Bennett muttered as she studied a tissue sample. Their genetic repair mechanisms are failing completely. She made notes on her tablet, which the Zaxonary still allowed her to use. They were monitoring everything she wrote, of course, desperate for any insights that might save their species. Back on the U.S. Nightingale, Captain Daniel Woods received the first detailed scans of the station's internal layout. "They're using our own medical equipment," he said, pointing to familiar energy signatures. "They must have replicated everything they took from Earth's hospitals." Lieutenant Sullivan noticed something odd in the data. "Sir, look at these power readings. Their shields are designed to keep things in, not out." They never expected to be followed. A plan began forming in her mind, drawing on both her combat experience and medical knowledge. Inside the station, Dr. Bennett was reaching a breakthrough in understanding the Zaxonary condition. Their species had relied too heavily on genetic engineering, making countless modifications to their DNA over thousands of years. Now those modifications were unraveling, like a poorly woven cloth coming apart at the seams. She was about to record her findings when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Through the laboratory's window, she saw flashes of light in space, weapons fire. Her heart leaped as she recognized the shapes of Earth vessels engaging the Zaxonary defense ships. The U.S. Nightingale led the assault, its medical teleporters modified to punch through the Zaxonary containment fields. Lieutenant Sullivan had discovered that the alien shields couldn't block the specific frequency used for emergency medical evacuations. It was a weakness born from their own desire to replicate Earth's medical technology. "Begin rescue operations," Admiral Martinez commanded. The fleet split into 3 groups, each targeting a different station. The Zaxonary ships moved to intercept them, but their vessels were designed for medical transport, not combat. They stood little chance against Earth's determined rescue force. Dr. Bennett felt the familiar tingle of a teleporter beam just as primary observer Killoran burst into the laboratory. The alien's galaxy-like eyes widened in surprise as Earth's medical personnel began vanishing around him. Their carefully gathered collection of human medical knowledge was slipping away. "You could have just asked for our help," Dr. Bennett said softly as the teleporter beam engaged. "We would have helped you willingly." The last thing she saw was Killoran's expression changing from shock to understanding, finally realizing the true mistake they had made. The rescue operation was going exactly as planned, but Dr. Bennett knew this couldn't be the end. The Zaxonary's condition was real, and their need for help was genuine. As she materialized in the Nightingale's medical bay, she was already thinking about how to convince Earth's leaders that there might be a better way to resolve this conflict. Captain Daniel Woods stood on the bridge of the U.S. Nightingale as the ship positioned itself for the final assault on Station Zero, the largest Zaxonary medical facility. The rescue fleet had already freed medical personnel from the 2 smaller stations, but intelligence suggested that the most critical research staff, including Dr. Bennett, had been transferred here. "Multiple hostile ships approaching," Lieutenant Sullivan announced from her tactical station. "They're forming a defensive line around the station." The holographic display showed 15 Zaxonary vessels moving to protect their main facility. Despite their lack of combat design, they were clearly prepared to fight. Inside Station Zero, Dr. Bennett and a group of captured medical staff watched the space battle unfold through the laboratory windows. They had spent the last hour secretly sabotaging the station's defensive systems, using their access to medical equipment to interfere with power distribution. "The backup generators should fail in about 10 minutes, whispered Dr. Alan Price as he carefully misaligned another power coupling. The Zaxnari had trusted their captives with maintenance of medical systems, never suspecting they would use this access against them. The station shuddered as the first volley of weapons fire struck its shields. Admiral Martinez had ordered a precise attack pattern, targeting only defensive systems while avoiding areas where medical personnel might be held. The U.S. Nightingale's advanced sensors could detect human life signs through the station's walls, allowing for surgical strikes. Lieutenant Sullivan spotted an opportunity in the chaos. "Captain, their shield frequency is fluctuating. If we time it right, we can teleport a rescue team directly into their medical sector." She had already suited up a team of combat medics, ready to board the station. The Zaxnari responded with unexpected desperation. Primary Observer Killoran's voice echoed through the station's communication systems. "Please cease your attack. You don't understand. We are trying to save our entire species. Without your medical knowledge, we face extinction." Dr. Bennett looked at the genetic samples she had been studying. The Zaxnari weren't lying about their condition. Their cellular structure was breaking down at an alarming rate. She estimated they had less than 30 years before their species would begin experiencing catastrophic failure across their population. The station rocked again as another blast hit the shields. In the confusion, Dr. Bennett accessed a communication terminal that had been left unlocked. She managed to establish a brief connection with the Nightingale. "Captain Woods, this is Dr. Bennett," she transmitted quickly. "The Zaxnari situation is genuine. Their genetic structure is collapsing. They need our help, but there's a better way than this." Woods relayed the message to Admiral Martinez, who was coordinating the fleet's attack. The Admiral's response was immediate. "Our priority is getting our people out. We can discuss helping them after they release their hostages." The backup generators failed right on schedule, creating gaps in the station's defensive screen. Lieutenant Sullivan's rescue team teleported aboard, moving swiftly through the corridors with practiced efficiency. They found most of the medical staff already gathered and waiting, thanks to Dr. Bennett's coordination. Primary Observer Killoran appeared in the main laboratory just as the rescue teams arrived. Rather than resisting, the alien stood quietly, its galaxy-like eyes fixed on Dr. Bennett. "We were wrong to take you by force," it admitted. "In our desperation, we forgot that healing cannot be achieved through violence." As the rescue teams began teleporting medical staff back to the Earth ships, Dr. Bennett made a decision. She quickly copied her research data on the Zaxnari condition to her tablet. Even if they had gone about it the wrong way, these beings needed help. Perhaps once everyone was safe, there could be a proper dialogue about saving their species. The station's main power grid was failing now, and emergency lights cast red shadows through the corridors. Earth's rescue fleet had won the battle, but Dr. Bennett knew that the real challenge, finding a way to help a dying species while maintaining humanity's ethical principles, was just beginning. The U.S. Nightingale's medical bay bustled with activity as Dr. Bennett presented her findings to Admiral Martinez and the fleet's senior staff. 3 days had passed since the rescue operation, and the Zaxnari ships now floated powerless, surrounded by Earth's fleet. On the main screen, images of degrading alien DNA strands rotated slowly. "Their situation is worse than we thought," Dr. Bennett explained, pointing to specific sections of genetic code. "The Zaxnari modified their DNA over thousands of years, trying to extend their lifespans and enhance their abilities. Now those modifications are unraveling faster than they can repair them." Captain Woods studied the medical data with a frown. "How long do they have?" The question hung heavy in the air as Dr. Bennett pulled up another chart. "Without intervention, their entire species will begin to fail within 25 years. Children will be born with severe genetic defects, and adults will experience rapid aging." She paused, letting the information sink in. "They'll be extinct within 50 years. Lieutenant Sullivan, who had joined the meeting after coordinating security for the captured Zaxxonary stations, spoke up. "They kidnapped our people. They violated every trust we extended to them." But her voice held a note of uncertainty as she looked at the medical data. In the Nightingale's secure conference room, primary observer Killoran sat with several other Zaxxonary officials. They had surrendered peacefully once their stations were captured, asking only for a chance to explain their desperate situation to Earth's leaders. "We accept that our methods were wrong," Killoran said, its galaxy-like eyes dimmed with shame. "We watched your species heal injuries and diseases we thought impossible to cure. When we saw Dr. Bennett's work with nanomedicine, we believed we had found our salvation." Admiral Martinez walked slowly around the conference table, considering the situation. The Zaxxonary had committed an act of war by kidnapping Earth's medical personnel. Yet here was a chance to save an entire species, if they could find a way to work together. Dr. Bennett pulled up her research notes from her time in captivity. "Their genetic problems are complex, but not impossible to solve. The nanomedicine techniques we've developed for cancer treatment could be modified to repair their degrading DNA. But it would take years of careful research and testing." The ship's communication system chimed as messages arrived from Earth's governments. The political situation was complicated. Many leaders wanted severe punishment for the kidnappings, while others saw an opportunity for humanity to prove its compassion and establish itself as a major force in interstellar medicine. "We could help them," Dr. Bennett said softly, "but it has to be their choice to trust us, just as it must be our choice to forgive them." She looked at the genetic data again. "They tried to take our knowledge by force, but healing doesn't work that way. It requires cooperation, trust, and understanding." Admiral Martinez made her decision. She opened a channel to the fleet and to Earth's combined military command. "I propose a compromise. The Zaxxonary must submit to justice for their actions, but we cannot condemn an entire species to extinction when we have the power to help." In the medical bay, Dr. Kevin Harris was already working with other doctors to adapt Earth's medical protocols for Zaxxonary physiology. The challenge excited them. It was a chance to push the boundaries of medical science while saving an entire civilization. Primary observer Killoran and its fellow officials listened as Admiral Martinez outlined her proposal. The Zaxxonary would release all their stolen medical data and equipment. They would submit to monitoring by Earth forces. In exchange, a medical research program would be established, with both species working together to solve the genetic crisis. As the discussions continued late into the ship's night cycle, Dr. Bennett returned to her temporary lab. On her tablet, she pulled up Sam's medical records from Mayo Clinic. Her young cancer patient's treatment had continued in her absence, and he was responding well. Looking at his improving test results, she felt more certain than ever that this was the right path forward. Medicine was about saving lives, no matter where those lives came from. 1 year after the Zaxxonary incident, Dr. Laura Bennett stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned Medical Research Station Unity. The massive facility orbited a neutral point between Earth and Proxima Centauri, its distinctive design combining both human and Zaxxonary architecture. Through the wide windows, she could see medical ships from both species coming and going, their crews working together in ways that would have seemed impossible 12 months ago. "The latest trial results are very promising," Dr. Alan Price said as he joined her at the window. He handed her a tablet showing genetic stability readings from their most recent treatment group. The Zaxxonary patients who had received the modified nanomedicine therapy were showing significant improvements in their cellular structure. In the station's main medical bay, Lieutenant Amy Sullivan, now Chief of Security for the Joint Medical Project, watched as human and Zaxxonary medical staff worked side by side. She had been skeptical of this cooperation at first, but seeing the results had changed her mind. The Zaxxonary had kept their word, sharing their own advanced medical knowledge in exchange for help with their genetic crisis. "Security report for the day," she told Captain Woods, who now commanded the Unity station. "All sections operating normally." The new Zaxxonary medical transport arrived on schedule with the next group of patients. She smiled slightly. They're still amazed we're actually helping them. Admiral Martinez visited the station regularly, overseeing the implementation of the Galactic Medical Exchange Treaty. The agreement had transformed the conflict into something unprecedented. A joint mission to advance medical science for both species. The Zaxxonary had publicly acknowledged their wrongdoing and submitted to strict oversight, but they had gained something far more valuable than what they had tried to steal: willing partners in their fight for survival. Dr. Bennett made her way to the pediatric wing, where she had a special appointment. Young Sam, her cancer patient from Mayo Clinic, had come to visit the station with his family. His treatment had been successful, and now he was interested in becoming a doctor himself, inspired by the events of the past year. "The space station is awesome," Sam exclaimed as she showed him around. His mother watched with tears in her eyes as a young Zaxxonary patient waved to Sam from a nearby treatment room. The two children had started drawing pictures for each other, despite their different species. Primary observer Hilloran, now serving as the Zaxxonary ambassador to the medical exchange program, met with Dr. Bennett in her office later that day. The aliens' galaxy-like eyes had regained their brightness as hope returned to its people. "Our latest population survey shows the genetic degradation has slowed significantly in treated individuals," Hilloran reported. "The birth rates in treated communities are returning to normal levels, and the infants show stable genetic patterns." It paused, its voice carrying genuine emotion. "We were wrong to try to take this knowledge by force. What we needed was not just human medical science, but human compassion." The U.S. Nightingale, still serving as the flagship for Earth's medical fleet, docked at the station that evening. Its mission had changed from rescue to research support, but it remained a symbol of humanity's commitment to both protecting and helping others. The ship's medical bay, once converted for combat operations, now hosted the most advanced genetic research laboratory in known space. As Dr. Bennett prepared her notes for the next day's treatments, she thought about how much had changed. The Zaxxonary's desperate act had led to something extraordinary: the first true collaboration between two spacefaring species. Earth's healers had not only been rescued, but had become part of something larger than themselves. In the station's nursery ward, a Zaxxonary infant, born with successfully stabilized genes, slept peacefully next to a human baby whose parents worked on the medical staff. Above them, a small plaque displayed words in both human and Zaxxonary languages. "In healing others, we heal ourselves." The stars shone brightly through the station's windows, seeming to promise more discoveries and collaboration to come. What had started as an act of desperation had transformed into a mission of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, the dedication of healers could light the way forward to a better future for all.